Lovely. Great. Well, I think maybe we can just get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We're so excited to be hosting this webinar, Beyond the MVP. My name is Esmeralda. I am on the strategy and innovation team at Amanzi.io. I'm going to pass you on to our founder and lovely host today, Katherine Mora. She's going to take you through the content of today's session, which will then be followed by a Q&A session. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Katherine Mora.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your time today. We have a lot of content, and we saw the feedback that you gave us when you were filling up the form, and we try to incorporate as much as possible content that is relevant for you. But remember that we have a Q&A section, and we are keeping 15 minutes for that. And the idea is that feel free to ask any questions that are relevant for your company at your stage, and we'll make the best to try to answer all of your questions or get back to you later if we can't. Perfect. So today's presentation is about Beyond the MVP, and it's a practical guide for non-technical leaders. Okay, sorry. A quick intro. My name is Katherine Mora. I've been in the tech space for 18 years, and I've worked with startups and SMB companies and global teams. And I have experience in global markets like in US, Europe, Latin Americans, and I have also worked in multiple industries. And I founded my company called Amanzi.io, where my team and I, the main goal is to amplify the work of people creating a positive impact in the world. And what we call ourselves is a bridge between business and technology. So our aim is to help founders, startups, and SMBs navigate technology, because I know technology can be a little bit scary, but the goal is that we can simplify this as much as possible and allow the founders and the companies to focus on what they can do best, and we can help them with the technology direction. Okay, so let's go straight to the presentation. So imagine, and sorry, let's just switch to this mode. This is a story that I see too often that I wanted to walk you through. So let's say that you have an idea. So you have a startup and you launch your MVP in record time, and it was amazing because you gained traction and your investors were impressed. And after a couple of weeks or months, then you started getting some pains, because as you started getting more users, then your system began to creak, and then your response times were very slow. So it's very important to remember that coming from point 1 to 2 sometimes is really hard. So having this good pain, these growing pains is in a way good, because it means that you're solving a problem, but it's also not good because this is a time when you're building your reputation and start getting revenue in your company. So imagine that you start getting those pains and something bad happens. You're having a demo with investor, or maybe it's Black Friday and you have a e-commerce platform, and that's like the main day for you. And if your system and your platform goes down, that means that you're losing sales, that you're losing potential investment from founders, from investors, sorry. So in cases like this, what happens is that things have gone too wrong. So sometimes it means that you need to rebuild everything from scratch, and that means losing money and time that you could have used onboarding more customers. At this point, we have people in the call who have built an MVP. They have a running platform with live users, and there are others who are planning on building their MVP. So we're going to quickly go through some cases of what is your MVP, your minimum viable product. So when you build your MVP, you can think of it, one option is to do the quick and dirty way, which you can think of it as a throwaway version. And this version is something that will help you get fast to the market. It will be very useful for validating the ideas and also onboarding customers quickly. This also will help you reduce the costs, but you need to keep in mind that as you're building this in a quick and dirty way, this means that this probably is not scalable and will lead you to technical debt. And again, building a quick and dirty version is not bad. It's actually recommended in many ways. But as long as you remember that as you're scaling, as things going well, then you might need to go and rebuild pieces. Another approach is that you can have this balance and compromise between speed and scalability. So you can have some pieces that, for example, you're using a no-code tool or a low-code tool, like a CRM, to showcase part of your system or platform, and then there will be some core features that you're going to build from scratch, because those are like the key core functionalities that will allow you to grow. So this balance, many people use it, and it's actually really good as well, because you're not building everything from scratch, but at the same time you're setting some sort of foundation. And the other one, the foundation first, this is usually when companies have validated a little bit more the idea, where you have interviewed more customers, that you maybe had a clickable prototype, and maybe you're building a complex solution, and you decide to build everything from zero. And this means that at the beginning, the development will be slower, or it's not going to be as fast to go to market as the quick and dirty version. But this will provide you a solid foundation for scaling, and you know that you can keep building pieces on top of this. I really, really like this image, because if you don't know, I'm originally from Costa Rica and I love mountains and being outdoors. So let me take you on a trip. So imagine that you're on a trip with me in Costa Rica, and we're going to visit the rainforest, where the road is very unpredictable, like this one in this image. So we are at the rental, and we need to choose a car, and we have two options. We have a beautiful and the latest models of a sports car with leather seats, aircon, super comfortable. But we also have another not so fancy car, but it's a 4x4, spacious, not as fancy as a sports car. Which one would you choose? Me, I would choose, even though the sports cars, it looks very fancy, because of the experience and where I'm trying to aim, which is visit mountains, maybe visit volcanoes, drive through rivers. I will probably choose the 4x4, because I don't want to get stuck, I don't want to damage the car, and I want to be able to enjoy the trip. And the point that I'm trying to make here with this image is that sometimes many companies, what they do is that they build these amazing, beautiful things, but they are not suited for what the customers need, or the problem that you're trying to solve is not necessarily what you build for. Or sometimes the development team usually has blame on building things that maybe not in the right way, but it doesn't matter also if you have the perfect development team, if you're telling them, or if they're building the wrong item. So that's the main point that I need you to remember as you're building a tech product. So are you scaling the wrong things, or maybe are you scaling prematurely? So what does it mean to scale prematurely? Let's say that maybe you haven't validated you're using the manual satisfaction. This sounds a little bit more of product, but I see a lot of companies building things that they don't need just yet. So it's important that you maybe have interviews with customers, you can create clickable prototypes, and then go and interview people and make sure that what you're building is what they actually need and what they will be buying. The other part is like maybe you're scaling prematurely if you don't have any key metrics and user feedback. So if you don't have a clear way of how people are using your product, let's say like a dashboard with insights, it will be very hard for you to know what parts do you need to scale, unless you're consistently talking with all of your customers. But it's very important that you have some metrics to see, like, okay, when are people abandoning the flow? Where are people having problems? And then that will guide the process and help you to make more informed decisions. The other part is like maybe we're scaling the wrong things. So maybe we're not prioritizing the right components or the critical components. And imagine, for example, that we are leading the YouTube team or the Spotify team. The main or the core things are the videos or the music. And if we have budget and we're going to spend, let's say, a month in thousands or hundreds or millions of dollars, it will be good to spend it into improving maybe the recommendations, the experience of listening to the music or watching the videos. But what if we decide to go and invest that money in updating the settings page, or the part where you can upload your image and then set your name? That wouldn't be a good use for your money. So it's important that you identify what are the core functionalities from your product. The other part, and this is something that sometimes we engineers like to do, which is over-engineer the solutions prematurely. And it means that maybe you're implementing too complex things for simple problems. And something that I saw with a company that reached out to me was that they had this nice system that was running amazingly, but they were paying like 2,000, 3,000 pounds per month on infrastructure costs. And they didn't have that many customers. They had like maybe less than 100 people per day. And the infrastructure or what they built was built for like a bigger company with more users. And it just was an overkill. So they didn't need that just yet. It's like if I got a mansion and right now I just need it or could afford a 2-bedroom house. And the last part is neglecting critical areas. So if we're building the quick and dirty solution, then it means that there will be probably technical debt. So it's important that before you try to scale, then you understand what are some areas that you need to stabilize in your product. So in summary, so how can you balance innovation with stability? So one is make sure that you do the validation of your product market fit, that you're building the right things. Then the other one is that you stabilize your core functionality before you go and add more pieces. So make sure that you have the solid foundation, and we're going to see in more detail how to do that, that you're monitoring the right metrics. And this one that sounds super obvious, but is not so obvious. And this is, again, something that I see a lot with people implementing tech solution, and it happens in the corporate space and it happens in the startup space. There's no clarity on the scope of the project. There's no clarity on the task. And when this happens, there's a lot of ambiguity. And that's when people start making the mistakes. That's when you don't meet your deadlines. So it's very important to have clear tasks and expectations. And we're going to talk about a little bit more during the presentation about being able to zoom in and zoom out. So let's assume that now you're all good. You're ready to scale. But what does scaling look like? It just changes depending on your company, depending on your business, the size of your company. So we're going to go and look through some examples. So when you're scaling, you can think of it scaling on performance. And what does mean? It could be, I need my platform to be able to be as fast as it is if I have one user versus if I have one users. I need to be able to accommodate for more people joining my platform and using it. So let's say that you're in the legal tech space and that you have a smart contract analysis AI, and that you have an AI solution that allows you to identify key clauses in the contracts in seconds and ensuring that you have fast reviews for your lawyers. What we want here, so if you're thinking about scaling, what you want is that performance always stays the same, even if you have multiple users, even if you have lawyers uploading contracts, like big contracts, small contracts. If you get someone uploading things from the US versus someone uploading it from Europe, if I have all the lawyers at the same time versus one lawyer at the moment. So we want to make sure that the performance of your platform is the right one. The other one is data storage and cost. So let's say that you have an edtech company and that you have an online platform, online learning platform. And your goal is that you have teachers and students, so you want to make teachers' video lessons accessible worldwide. And the challenge is that you want to be able to store and stream these videos in a way that is cost effective, right? So one thing is that I need to be able to support all the users in the platform, joining the platform, the teachers, the students, but I also want to make it cost effective, because if I don't plan my solution in the right way, it might mean that I'm just uploading, or my users are uploading all these videos and it's costing a lot of money for me as a company. And maybe I need to tweak my pricing structure or add restrictions. And so then I'm still a profitable company, right? The other part is like, I have the solid structure and now I need to start adding new features. So let's say that you have in the journalism space and that you have a news platform and your goal is to increase user engagement and loyalty through tailored content. When you're adding a new feature, I'm assuming that you already have a platform that is running, and so that it has the basic functionality, right? Where people can go read the articles, where your journalists or editors can go and upload information. Doesn't matter if it wouldn't work if I want to add new features if I don't have the basic ones, right? So let's say that this company wants to add some personalization on the news and recommendations to attract a broader audience. So if you have the right foundation, then start adding these pieces will be really not really easy, but easier because then I already have the basic working. Okay, so going a little bit technical, but not too technical, is like, okay, so what are some key points that I have to keep in mind if I'm going to scale? So one of them is the architecture decisions. So we need to think about what components are we going to use, what technologies are needed, which parts are we going to build from scratch, which ones we can reuse. So a clear example would be maybe I'm building an e-commerce platform. So if my key component is not payments, I just need something for people to go and pay. I don't need to go and build the whole payments flow from zero. I can just use a service like Stripe, right? But maybe there are other parts where I need to process a lot of data, so that is worth you maybe building from scratch and relying on other technologies to build it in a nice way. And it's important as you are thinking about architecture decisions that your tech lead, your CTO understand the bigger vision of the company. Because even though right now you might be building for something small or version 1, version 2, if we keep in mind what's the bigger picture of what we want to build, even though we're not going to build it just yet, we can plan for this. So then in the future, in 3 months, 6 months, or a year, we don't have to throw everything away and rebuild from zero because we didn't take it into consideration. In terms of infrastructure, is you need to decide where you're going to host your product, and you can choose a cloud provider. There are many out there. There are like the big ones like AWS from Amazon, GCP from Google, Azure from Microsoft, and there are many others. So you need to choose a cloud provider and understand also like they also offer services like AI solutions. So maybe it will be, well, not maybe, it's very important that you select one that will allow you to reuse components that you might need. And especially, and then the other part is that these providers sometimes have free credits. So if you didn't know, then you can go and apply as a startup, and then you can get like $1,000 and then increase in more. So that will help you as you're building your solution and as you start getting traction and getting revenue. And something to keep in mind here is that the easy and replicable deployments and reducing human errors and backups is really, really important, especially if you have live users, because you need to take extra care when making changes. You don't want to lose data. You don't want the service to be down, right? So you need to think about those things as not just coding the solution, but what happens when we need to put it out there live for everyone to see it. The other part that is very important for you to keep in mind is the data management. So what does it mean? So where am I going to store the data? What type of data am I going to be handling? If I'm in the EdTech platform, it's very likely that I'll be working with videos, maybe some PDF, Word documents, maybe some audio files. But maybe if I'm in the legal tech, then it will be mainly contracts. If I'm in the finance space, it might be more spreadsheets or numbers, right? So what type of data are you going to store? How much data are you going to store? You don't need to know everything, but just get an idea of like how much are you going to allow people, or of how that's going to be tied to your pricing model. If you're in a specific industries like in health space, in finance, in legal, then you need to take into consideration things like the regulations, right? In some countries, the data cannot leave the country. So it's and there are other regulations that you need to abide. So then it's important to know those upfront because that will guide the solution. And if at some point you're also going to start adding AI, which is a no-brainer, right? AI, we are going to talk a little bit more in detail in the next slides, but with AI, you need data. So what type of data can I start tracking from the beginning that will eventually help me to tune my AI model, my AI system? So let's say with the same EdTech example, I can start tracking information like which are the most popular videos, who's the top teacher, which parts of the videos maybe people are skipping, what's the preference of, like, if you think about the sentiment of the content from teacher A to teacher B, then you'll be able to help to extract this information and then use it to personalize some AI feature that you can start incorporating in your system. And finally, then we have also the metrics. So as I mentioned before, if we cannot see how people are using our application, it will be very hard for us to make informed decisions. So it's important to do analytics and monitoring. So analytics will be more like, like where in their flows, where people are getting stuck, what's the favorite feature that people are using, where are people connecting from. So if we see here in the map, then here it will tell us that we have customers all over the world. And if we have customers all over the world, then it means that our system needs to be online 24/7. But let's say that most of our customers are in Europe, and if they're in Europe, then we can say that probably the peak times will be from 8 to 6 p.m. And then during off hours when everyone is sleeping, then we don't need to maybe have so much resources running. So having this information will allow you to make better informed decisions about features to implement, but also about your architecture and how you use your resources and make the most out of the experience and the cost for your solution. Communication going wrong. This happens a lot, especially between technical people and non-technical people. And this is something that I see very often. So I was working with a company and they were giving very vague requirements. So I was just there more like seeing how they were doing things. They already had the development team. And the CEO gave this new requirement. They were building like a video call system. And he says, I need an industry standard video call system. And that was it. There was no more details. And if you think about it, like if you think a video call system, so there could be many ways of doing it, right? Are you going to do like WhatsApp style, how you call on your iPhone or when you call on your Android? There are so many variations. So if your team doesn't ask and push back, there could be assumption and misinterpretation. So in this case, the developers went and built something very complex, which was an overkill for what the startup needed. And what happened is that the project took way longer than it should have, and it cost way more as well, because that wasn't what the customer wanted and what the CEO was referring to, and it just delayed the whole launch of the product. So the lesson here, and again, it sounds very simple, but this happens in the corporate space, this happens in the startup world. If we don't have specific requirements and we cannot communicate properly between business and tech, then this is going to cost you a lot of money. The next thing, and so I'm going super quickly, is like your development team. So there are multiple roles in your development team. Before I go through them, I want to, I'm sorry, I just want to take a look at the time. Yes. So in your development team, it's important to remember that, especially if you're starting and you don't have that many resources, you can think of your team as people that can wear multiple hats. So it's in a development team, you need to have the developers, but you also need like a more senior person that can be a technical lead that reviews how the code is created and give guidance and support to your development team. It could be that you have a tech lead and then a developer, but it can be that one of your developers is also your tech lead. And this all will change depending on the stage of your startup and your budget and time to market and things like that. The other part to keep in mind is that you don't really need all the time more senior people in certain areas. If you're starting, then some fractional allocation or interim talent will be best, because roles like DevOps leads, like CTOs, like architects, they are very expensive to hire someone, and also to keep them in your company engaged and help them to grow, right? So if you're starting, then it might be best to hire some fractional talent, because these are people that you need, but but you don't have the budget to do it. So it's important that maybe you have some budget allocated for them, a few hours per week or per month. So here are some examples. I cannot go through all of them because I don't have that much time, but it's very important to remember that you need to have some sort of product owner, which is the direction of the product. As you're building features, it's important to have a UX and UI designer, or doesn't have to be full-time. I can show you what wireframes look like, but this will help speed up the development process. Someone that manages your project, and again, it can be someone wearing multiple hats, and you have your usual roles like front-end developer, back-end developer, DevOps engineer, a tech lead, a quality assurance person, and your CTO, architect, or more senior roles. The most important part for you to remember here is that you can think of your team in like different categories. So one will be the builders, and you can think of it as your core development team. And here's where you need a mix of different skills, right? And this will change depending on the industry that you are. So if I'm on the finance area, then it would be good to have a development team that understands about finance. If I'm on the health space, then it will be useful. It's not necessary, but it will be very useful if I have someone that understands that. And usually the development team, they zoom in a lot. So they're focused on like, these are the tasks that we need to work on because we need to deliver A, B, or C in the next month or 2 months. You need then, or you have the visionary, which is usually the founder. And this is the one that keeps the team and the company focused on the product vision and the company goal. And this is just to remember, this person will usually zoom out a little bit more and is the one that will drive the direction of the company, hence the product. You also have the zoomer, which is very, very important because here in the builders, you zoom in a lot. In the visionary, you zoom out more. But then you need to have someone that can zoom in and zoom out when necessary, because you need to be able to see the big picture. But at the same time, you need to be able to guide your development team, and you need to make sure that you're not losing sight of what you need to implement straight away. So what's something that we need to deliver in a month or two? So it's very important to have this person. And especially if you're a non-technical founder, it's important to have someone who's able to translate between business and the technical language. Because as I was talking about the communication problems, that's where also a lot of the errors happen, or where the bad things happen, because technical people might not speak business people don't speak technical, and it's like they're speaking in different languages and no one understands each other. And this is where I see a lot of founders and leads on the business side being very frustrated about their development teams, but also the development team being very frustrated because they're trying to do their best, but it looks like what they're building is not what the company needed. So it's crucial that you have someone, either like you might be wearing just two hats, but it's important. So a role of fractional CTO, for example, or a tech lead might be a good fit here. But you need to also remember that I've seen in a lot of startups where they assume that the development team understands business, but they're not able to either do the zoom in, the zoom out, or to just understand the business. So our last slide before we go into our Q&A. Well, I have one more slide, but AI is out there, and if you don't use it, then you might be losing and getting behind. But it's very important that you use AI in a strategic way. So I get a lot of people saying, I want AI. And for me, like, I get really excited because the idea is that we can go and implement many things. But what I'm seeing is that AI is becoming like a flashy thing, and people really don't know how they're going to incorporate it, or they think that by saying that the product has AI automatically is going to bring more users. So what you need to do if you want to incorporate AI in a strategic way is that you first need to identify what is the problem that you're trying to solve, or like the new feature or the improvement in your system. So if you clearly define that, then we can go and evaluate, is AI the right fit? Because many times people say, I want to add a chatbot, but that might not be the solution or the right fit for your company. Or when you want to implement an AI solution, there might be a step before that you have to do. Let's say that you don't have the data, you need to clarify flows. So it's important that you evaluate if AI is a good fit. And also, depending on your industry or how you're going to use it, you need to identify what are the potential risks, especially if you're in the finance space, the health space. It's very important to understand those upfront. After that, then you need to think about the data. Nowadays, there are many, many models. So in the past, you had to train a model and you needed many data scientists and lots of data. But nowadays, there are many models available from like OpenAI, for Anthropic, there are many. But you still need some data and understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve to make sure that you're training or setting it up in the right way. So there's a saying of garbage in and garbage out. If I don't have quality data, then doesn't matter how good my model is, it's going to throw an output that is not really what you needed. So we need to start thinking about what data do we need to gather. Do we have the data that we need, or do we need to start gathering it? And remember that in the previous slides, I mentioned that as you're building your solution, like the YouTube example or the music example, then what are some metrics that I can start gathering that will allow me to personalize or to tune my AI model? And finally, and this is where I see many people went through all these points, but they forgot one of the most important ones, which is the resources. How much is it going to cost me to implement the solution? So how much people do I need? Do I need data scientists? What type of specialized talent do I need? And also the computing power. But I feel that the most important that we are not, like companies are not considering, is how much is it going to cost to maintain it? So once everything is live, how much is it going to cost per user? Do I need to add certain restrictions, or do I need to update my pricing models? Because what's happening is that many companies are just putting AI everywhere, and as people start using it, then the cost of AI is getting higher and higher, but what you're charging for your product cannot really cover this expense. So it's very important that you keep in mind these as you think about adding AI into your system. So in a nutshell, what we have seen during the presentation is it's very important to set the right foundation. This involves zooming in, zooming out, thinking about your architecture, and keeping vision of what you want to implement in the medium long term, even though you're not going to implement it just yet. It's very important that you prioritize, as we said, define the tasks, and you have to have a balance between speed, quality, and cost, because maybe you want to go super fast, but you don't have the budget to be able to do that. Maybe you have like super extreme quality, but your budget is really low, so you cannot really afford so senior people. There are different ways to balance this. So it's very important that you set clear expectations and that you also avoid vague requirements, because the clear your tasks are or the vision is, it's easier for your team to implement it. The other one is build the right team. And again, depending on what you're building, you need to hire for the right skills. There are front-end developers, back-end developers, DevOps, but do you need someone with specialized skills? Is your product or something that is very easy to understand, or is it very specific where you need people that know how to code but also has knowledge in that industry? And as I said before, communication is key, and you need to be able to communicate between business, between product, and between development. And finally, I see a lot of companies with tech products that don't have any documentation. So you need to have some technical documentation, document certain key decisions, maybe have some architecture diagrams. This is important as you onboard users and not users, sorry, as you onboard more people in your team, or you also don't want to depend on one person. I've seen companies started with the MVP where one person built it, and if this person goes or disappears or something happens, then everything is lost because nothing is documented. So it's very important to keep this in mind. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. Again, we're going to have Q&A, but before we go there, we'll be sending you the recording, and we'll be sending you some templates that will help you as a guide for you as non-technical founders. We'll also be emailing more details of our next webinar, and if you have any suggestions of what topics you would like us to cover, feel free to put it in the chat or reply to the email that we'll be sending, because the idea is that we bring content that is relevant for you. And if you need more personalized help, then we will also be sending a link. You can book a free discovery call to see where you are and give you some tips or see if we can work together. So next is Q&A. And remember, there are no silly questions. And I'm happy to answer some of the questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat. And we also have some questions of people who sign up and they put them in the questionnaire. So I'm going to give maybe like 10 seconds to see if someone has a question. And again, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Katherine.
I had a question. Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi.
Thank you for this. I'm at a really early stage, so I'm basically working on a prototype with a freelancer, and he's doing it in Figma, which for me as a non-technical person was easier to be like, here's what I want it to look like, and this screen should go to this, and everything, you know. And the goal is to use that prototype to get some funding to build the app properly from the ground up. My question is around when you said give specific requirements, which totally makes sense. But for me, I'm struggling a little bit because I have zero knowledge as to kind of how apps are built from the ground up. So is it, I was wondering, maybe, I guess if you could give some examples of like maybe the video call app example, like what the person, even if they don't know technically what the different options are in the back end, what could they have said to kind of make it more successful? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. So
Thank
it's
you.
really, yeah, no, thank you so much for the question. And it's really good to hear that you started with a clickable prototype because that's also, I think I had a slide here too, in case some people didn't know what the clickable prototype. But if you have this, it's very easy or way easier for a development team to understand the scope of the work. And as you're building your clickable prototype, it's very important to keep in mind, is that the full version? Are you going to go and build that straight away? Or maybe this is the full version, but then phase one, you're going to build just this screen 1, 2, flow 1, 2, and 3. So once you have the flows, it's important that as you're going through them, you think about all the different cases, because this will be, then it will mean less questions from the development team. So what happens when you click on this button? What happens when it's the first time someone is using your application? What happens if someone that have used your application for the last 3 months, like what are the different states? What are the different errors? What are some assumptions, right? You can maybe put little post-its next to the different screens and list those assumptions. So what I'll say is like very important that you have your prototype, you go through the prototype and then try to show it to other people, because the idea is that you go and get feedback before you do any development, because then you can have your designer going back and updating things based on the feedback. What many people do is that they don't even have wireframes, or they have wireframes and they go straight away to implement it. And then once they release it to users, then they start getting feedback. So then that's where the development becomes very expensive and it takes way longer. Then the other part is that with this, then you can work with something technical. It might be more like a lead person, an architect, someone that can translate the, as I was saying, right, like the technical and the business. Because even though we have the wireframes, we'll need to understand like what are the different cases that you're thinking about. So you can start writing like a document, like, or we can start like as technical people, right, writing a document which what will be the tasks. So as we think of wireframes, you can think of it as flows. So you have a login flow, you have a configuration flow, I don't know, depending on your application. So let's define first, what are the flows that you're going to implement on your first version? That's very important. So once you do that, then you need to have, if you're building from zero, sounds like you're building from zero, right? So then you don't have anything yet, right? You just have
I'm sorry, building from what did you say?
from zero. So you don't have anything yet.
I see.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Yep.
Okay, so then we need to keep in mind things like, okay, we're going to deploy is an app, right? If it's an app, then you need to think about the app stores. So using the app stores require a little bit of extra work, because you need to go through approval processes and you need to abide by certain guidelines that they have. So you need to then choose also the technology. If you're building an app, you will want to maybe use a multi-framework technology like React Native, because you don't want to build you want your application to be available in iOS and Android, right? And many people, what they do is they go and just build one for iOS and then the other one for Android. With a technology like React Native, you build it once and then it can be available in multiple systems. So that's also very important, like thinking about what technology you're going to use. Then the other part would be, now you need to sit with your development team or identify, do you need any specialized skills, or like it's like normal knowledge on the development side, and then estimate how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take, and make sure that it aligns with your budget and with your timelines. And then as you start building, before you even start building, then your development team can list like all the tasks. So from the development point of view, once you have the, like for example, wireframes, then is understanding, okay, these are the key tasks that we're going to work on, and start refining each of the tasks. And then they're going to start being assigned to users, to developers. And it's important as you're building that your team, that you have calls with your development team, especially at the beginning, because that's when the development yes, I need to hurry up. So that's when the development team will have way more questions, and you need to clarify assumptions and make sure that they're all on the same page. So it's important that you have different meetings with your team and that you are building something iterative, which means that you want to start seeing progress every week. At the beginning, you might not see progress because they're setting the foundation, right? But you still need to see like what is it that they're building, are there delays and things like that. So that's like a very summary, like a quick summary. But again, communication, making sure that tasks are defined. Even though you're not technical, it's important that you're in the loop, because you want to clarify and avoid assumptions. And if you're on the loop consistently, then if the dev team starts deviating a little bit, then it will be easier to get them on track, rather than if you wait for 2 months to see what is it that they built.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I think we might have time for just one last quick question. There's one that just came through the chat, Katherine. So thank you for a great presentation. When deciding pricing, how do I figure out what to charge customers when I don't really understand what's driving server pricing? I'm worried about losing money when lots of people start using our services and hosting provider increases costs. And our hosting provider increases costs. Maybe we can go for a really short answer before the webinar finishes.
Awesome. Okay, so for this one, it's very important to keep in mind different aspects. So one is, how much is it going to cost you to build a platform? So you need to keep that in mind. Also, how much is it going to cost you to maintain the platform? So what happens, for example, with the Elizabeth example, once you build your application, what's going to happen? Are you going to keep your development team and pause your development team? Are you going to work on bug fixes, basic maintenance, or are you going to add new features? What's going to happen after you build your platform will also dictate maybe your pricing model, or like what you need to keep in mind as in your budget. The other part is infrastructure cost. As I was mentioning, you need to understand like what is it that you're building, like how many users are you going to expect, how much is your application going to cost for it to run all the time. As you start getting more users, how will that affect? For example, if you're using AI, it means that if you start getting more users and using the AI feature, it means that the price will go up. So you need to start thinking about what happens when you get more users, when you get more data, so more like within the infrastructure side. And again, it's very important that you don't build a mansion just yet if you just need a 3-bedroom house. And to avoid like what I said in the presentation where I had this company that were paying like 2,000, 3,000 pounds per month, which was a lot for the scale of their company. And the other part is with the analytics, for example, you're able to understand what are your peak times. So if you're a company like Ticketmasters where they sell the tickets, there are like key times, for example, when there's the Adele concert, Taylor Swift concert, everyone goes and buys. But after that, there probably not that much traffic. So you can think about like what are your peak times and quiet times. And then during those peak times, you can scale. You have an infrastructure that scales. So let's say like you have a team working and you're just renting like a few spaces in a co-working space. But when you have the company gathering, you temporarily hire a bigger space, and after that go back to the smaller one, so you can scale in and out in order to be able to support the peak times and lower the cost. And yeah, I think those are like the main ones to keep in mind, but it all depends on what you're building.
Great. Thank you, Katherine. I think that's all that we have time for. Thank you so much to everybody for joining. We're definitely going to send around the recording of this webinar and some of the notes so you can kind of catch up on the key points. We're also going to be hosting another webinar very soon. Very likely that it's going to focus on AI pricing. We're very happy to take suggestions as well. So we really look forward to hearing from you again. We went just 2 minutes over, but we really hope that you took loads of value from this webinar. And we're so excited to do this. And thank you so much for joining. Katherine, I don't know if you want to say some final remarks as well.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully that was valuable. And we'll be hosting more webinars, so feel free to give us some ideas. We're thinking about more on the AI side, or maybe going cost specific. So whatever you tell us will help us shape the webinar. And again, we'll be sending more details, so feel free to send us more questions or book a discovery call with us. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Bye. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.